His silver Lexus sat in her driveway always arriving. His toothbrush lived in her bathroom. His coffee mug waited by her kitchen sink every morning. For 3 years, Claire Hoffman believed she'd married a man who loved her, who chose her, who built a life with her in their Portland home. But on Southeast Division Street, she was only half his life. In Beaverton, 17 miles away, another woman called him husband. 2 children called him dad. Another house held his clothes, his photos, his promises. Michael Brennan didn't have an affair. He had a system, color-coded calendars, encrypted files, tracking conversations, bank accounts shuffling money between 2 families who never knew the other existed. When both wives finally met, they discovered something worse than betrayal. They'd been parts of a carefully managed operation. 2 performances running simultaneously, neither knowing they shared a stage. This is the story of how one man built to complete lives and how 2 women had to destroy everything they thought was real to find the truth. The rain fell softly against the windows of the craftsman-style house on Southeast Division Street, a sound so familiar in Portland that Claire Hoffman barely noticed it anymore. She stood at the kitchen counter, slicing vegetables for dinner, watching the clock above the stove tick towards Michael would be home soon. He was always home by 7 on Wednesdays. At 52, Claire had learned to appreciate the small certainties in life. A dependable husband. A mortgage nearly paid off. Wednesday dinners that ran like clockwork. She had married Michael Brennan 3 years ago, at an age when most of her friends were celebrating anniversaries measured in decades, not years. Her first marriage had ended badly. Her ex-husband's alcoholism had made every day unpredictable and exhausting. Michael was different. Michael was steady. The front door opened precisely at 6:45, and Michael's familiar voice called out from the entryway. "Honey, I'm home." Claire smiled despite herself. The phrase was so deliberately old-fashioned, so sweetly earnest, that it never failed to warm her. Michael appeared in the kitchen doorway, raindrops still clinging to his gray wool coat. At 50, he maintained the trim build of someone who took care of himself. Morning runs along the Willamette River, careful attention to what he ate. His salt and pepper hair was styled neatly, and his blue eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled at her. "How was your day?" Claire asked, turning to accept his kiss on the cheek. "Long meetings with the Seattle office," he said, loosening his tie. Micah worked as a regional sales director for a medical supply company, a position that required frequent travel up and down the I-5 corridor. "I'm exhausted. This smells amazing, by the way." Claire returned to her vegetables. "It's just chicken stir-fry." "Nothing fancy. Everything you make is fancy to me," Michael said, already heading toward the stairs. "I'm going to change Bay down in 10. This was their routine. This was their life. And Claire had never been happier. She had met Michael at a fundraiser for the Portland Art Museum, an event her friend Sandra had dragged her to 2 months after her divorce was finalized. Claire had been standing alone near a Georgia O'Keeffe painting, wondering how soon she could politely leave when Michael had appeared beside her. "She painted this one in New Mexico," he'd said, gesturing to the canvas. "1943. Right in the middle of the war." Claire had turned to look at him, surprised by the genuine interest in his voice, rather than the performative knowledge-dropping she'd expected. "You know O'Keeffe's work? My mother was an art teacher," Michael had replied with a self-deprecating smile. "I absorbed more than I realized as a kid. I'm Michael, by the way." They had talked for an hour, then 2. By the end of the evening, Claire had forgotten about leaving early. Michael was intelligent, attentive, genuinely interested in what she had to say. He asked about her work as a speech therapist at Roosevelt High School, and he actually listened to her answers. When he'd asked for her number, Claire had surprised herself by saying yes immediately. Their courtship had been refreshingly adult. No games, no drama. Michael called when he said he would call. He planned thoughtful Datsa jazz concert at the Schnitzer dinner at La Pigeonne, a weekend trip to the coast. He introduced her to his friends, a group of professionals around his age who welcomed Claire warmly. He spoke openly about his previous marriage, which had ended in divorce 8 years earlier. "We married too young," he'd explained over dinner one night. 3 months into their relationship, grew in different directions. It was amicable, really. No kids to complicate things, thank God. We both just wanted different lives. Claire had appreciated his honesty. Her own divorce had been anything but amicable, and Michael's calm acceptance of his past felt mature and healthy. When Michael had proposed after 18 months of dating, Claire had cried with happiness. They were married in a small ceremony at the Japanese Garden in Washington Park, with 40 guests and cherry blossoms falling like snow. Claire's daughter from her first marriage, Jessica, had served as her maid of honor. Though at 28 and living in Boston, Jessica hadn't been able to spend much time getting to know Michael before the wedding. "He seems great, Mom," Jessica had said during a rare phone. "I'm happy for you. You deserve someone who treats you well." Now, 3 years into the marriage, Claire still felt that same contentment. Michael was attentive, without being smothering. He traveled for work often, usually 3 or 4 days a week, but he called every evening when he was away. He remembered important dates, brought her flowers for no reason, and listened when she talked about the challenges of working with students who struggled with speech impediments and learning disabilities. "Dinner's ready!" Claire called up the stairs. Michael appeared moments later in jeans and a navy sweater, looking relaxed and comfortable.
They sat at the dining room table, a beautiful walnut piece they'd found at an antique store in
Selwood talked about their days. Michael described a difficult client meeting in Seattle. Claire vented about the school district's latest budget cuts. "They're talking about reducing therapy sessions from twice a week to once a week," she said, frustration evident in her voice. "These kids need consistency. 1 session a week isn't enough. Can you push back?" Michael asked, refilling her wine glass. "Talk to the principal." "I've tried. It's coming from the district level. Budget constraints, they keep saying." Claire sighed. "I hate feeling helpless." Michael reached across the table and "You're not helpless. You're one person fighting against a broken system. That takes courage." This was what Claire loved about him. He didn't minimize her feelings or offer empty reassurance. He acknowledged the difficulty and reminded her of her strength. After dinner, they watched a documentary on PBS, Michael's arm around her shoulders on the couch. At 10:30, they went upstairs to bed. Michael set his alarm for 5:30. He had an early meeting in Eugene the next morning and would need to leave by 6. "I'll try not to wake you," he whispered as they settled under the covers. "You never do," Claire murmured, already drifting toward sleep. She didn't hear him leave the next morning. She never did. Michael moved through the house like a ghost when he had early departures, considerate even in the smallest gestures. Claire woke at 7, made coffee, and prepared for another day at Roosevelt High School. It was a Thursday, which meant back-to-back therapy sessions until 3 o'clock. She checked her phone over breakfast and saw a text from Michael. Sent at 6:30. "On the road. Love you. Have a great day." She smiled and replied with a heart emoji. The day unfolded predictably. Morning sessions with a sophomore who stuttered, a junior with a lisp, a freshman with selective mute. Lunch in the faculty lounge, where Claire ate a salad while her colleague Denise complained about standardized testing requirements. Afternoon sessions with 3 more students, each one struggling in their own way to find their voice in a world that didn't always want to listen. At 3:15, Claire gathered her materials and headed for the parking lot. The October sky was the particular shade of gray that meant rain was coming, the kind of gray that defined Portland autumns. She climbed into her Honda CR-V and started the engine, already thinking about dinner. Maybe pasta tonight. Something simple. Her phone rang as she pulled out of the parking lot, an unfamiliar number with a 503 area code. Portland, but not anyone in her contacts. Claire almost let it go to voicemail, but something made her answer. "Hello, is this Claire Hoffman?" The voice was strained, uncertain. "Yes, this is Claire." "Who's calling?" There was a pause, a breath. Then, "My name is Rachel Brennan. I think we need to talk about Michael." Claire's hand tightened on the steering wheel. "I'm sorry. Who?" "Rachel Brennan. Michael's wife." The world seemed to tilt sideways. Claire pulled into a parking space, hands shaking. "I don't understand. I'm Michael's wife?" "No," the voice said, quiet but certain. "You're not." "I am. And I think we've both been lied to for a very long time." Claire sat in her car in the Roosevelt High School, phone pressed to her ear, unable to form coherent thoughts. The rain that had been threatening all afternoon finally began to fall, drops spattering against the windshield in an accelerating rhythm. "Are you still there?" Rachel's voice was gentle, almost apologetic. "I don't." "This doesn't make sense," Claire managed. "Michael and I have been married for 3 years. We live together. On Southeast Division. He's my husband. We've been married for 17 years, Rachel said. We live in Beaver. We have 2 children. Emma is 15. Tyler is 12. Children. Michael had children. No, that couldn't be right. Michael had told her he'd never had children, that his first marriage had ended before they'd started a family. Claire's mind raced through 3 years of memories, searching for evidence, for cracks in the story she'd been told. He told me he was divorced, Claire said. 8 years ago. No kids. He's not divorced. Rachel's voice broke slightly. I'm looking at our wedding photo right now. June 14th, 2008, St. Mary's Cathedral. My parents paid for everything. Claire felt nausea rising in her. Why are you calling me? How did you even get my number? I found it in his phone. This morning, while he was in the shower, there were text sweet messages. Plans for dinner. I didn't understand at first. I thought maybe it was a work colleague. Maybe someone he was. I don't know. Having an affair with... But then I saw Lovey, and I looked you up online. Your Facebook is public. I saw your profile picture. The 2 of you at what looks like Powell's bookstore. And your relationship status says married to Michael Brennan. Claire's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the phone. Where is he now? That's what I want to know, Rachel said, her voice hardening. He left this morning around 6. Said he had meetings in Eugene all day and wouldn't be home until late tonight. That's what he always says on Thursdays. Eugene meetings. He told me the same thing, Claire whispered. He texted me at 6:30, said he was on the road. The silence that followed was heavy with the weight of shared realization. 2 women, sitting in different parts of Portland, understanding simultaneously that the man they'd both trusted had constructed 2 entirely separate lives with the precision of an architect. We need to meet, Rachel said. Face to face. I need to understand how this happened. How long has he been? We met 4 years ago. Married 3 years ago, last June. Claire's voice sounded hollow to her own ears. He said his first wife, you. I guess he said the marriage ended amicably. No children. He said you both wanted diffs. We have children, Rachel repeated. And this time there was anger beneath the pain. 2 beautiful children who worship their father. Emma just made the high school volleyball team, and he went to every game. Tyler plays piano. Michael helped him practice every Sunday morning. We're a family. We've always been a family. Claire felt something breaking inside her chest, a splintering sensation that radiated outward. I don't understand how this is possible. He lives with me. He's home most nights. We share a bed, a life. How could he? What nights? Rachel interrupted. Specifically, what nights is he with you? Claire's mind worked through the pattern she'd never questioned. Wednesday through Friday night. Sometimes Saturday. He travels the beginning of the week for work. Seattle, Tacoma, sometimes Vancouver. He's usually gone Monday morning through Wednesday afternoon. He's with us Monday through Wednesday, Rachel said slowly, the pieces falling into place. Thursday through Saturday, he's traveling. Seattle, Eugene, Salem. Regional sales meetings. That's what he tells us. His job, Claire said, grasping for something solid. He works for a medical supply company. Regional sales director. He does, Rachel confirmed. That part is real. Pacific Northwest Medical Solutions. He's worked there for 12 years. The travel is real, too. He does have clients all over Oregon and Washington. But I guess the travel was also his cover. His excuse for why he wasn't home every night. Claire tried to remember if she'd ever seen Michael's office, met his colleagues. She couldn't recall a single instance. He'd always kept his work life separate, which had seemed respectful and professional at the time. Now it felt like another carefully constructed wall. We need to meet, Rachel said again. Tonight, I need to see you. I need to know I'm not losing my mind. Where? Claire heard herself ask. There's a coffee shop on Northwest Cup and Saucer. Do you know it? I know it. 7 o'clock? Okay.
Claire's voice was barely audible. How will I recognize you?
I'll be the one who looks like her entire world just collapsed, Rachel said. And despite everything, there was a bitter edge of humor in her words. But I'm tall, blonde, wearing a gray raincoat. I'll find a table in the back. I have brown hair. I'll be wearing a blue jacket. Claire paused. Rachel, does he know you found out? Not yet. He left before I could confront him. I've been trying to process this all day, trying to figure out what to do. I needed to talk to you first, to confirm I wasn't imagining things. You're not imagining things, Claire said quietly. I wish you were. They ended the call, and Claire sat in her car as the rain intensified, drumming against the roof like accusations. She felt dizzy, unmoored, as if the ground beneath her had suddenly revealed itself to be nothing more than painted canvas. Every memory of the past 3 years was now suspect, every sweet moment potentially calculated, every loving gesture possibly rehearsed. She thought about calling Michael, confronting him immediately. But something stopped her. She needed to meet Rachel first. Needed to see the other woman's face, hear her story, understand the full scope of what had been done to both of them. Claire drove home in a daze, the familiar route along Burnside Boulevard feeling alien and wrong. When she pulled into the driveway of the craftsman house she'd thought of his home, she sat in the car for a long moment, staring at the front door. Everything looked the same. The potted ferns on the porch. The welcome mat she'd bought at the farmer's market. The house number they'd replaced together last spring. But nothing was the same. Nothing would ever be the same again. Inside, Claire moved through the rooms like a detective at a crime scene, looking for evidence she'd somehow missed. She checked the closet. Michael's clothes hung on the right side. But how many clothes? She'd never... Did he have another closet in Beaverton? In a house with a woman and 2 children who thought he was theirs? She opened his dresser drawers. Normal clothes, socks, boxers, t-shirts, nothing suspicious. But what had she expected to find? A second phone, a secret calendar tracking his 2 lives. Claire moved to his nightstand and opened the drawer. Insurance papers for the house. A book on Civil War history he'd been reading. Reading glasses. Mundane, normal things. She pulled the drawer all the way out, checked behind it. Nothing. The bathroom yielded the same results. His toiletries, his razor, his cologne. Everything in its place. Everything exactly as it should be. But it was all a lie. Claire sank onto the edge of the bed they shared and looked at her phone. 4:47 p.m. 2 hours until she met Rachel. 2 hours to sit with the knowledge that her marriage was a fiction, her husband a stranger. She thought about Jessica in Boston, happily engaged to her girlfriend Lauren, planning a wedding for next spring.
Should Claire call her? Tell her. But what would she even say?
Your stepfather, who you've met exactly 3 times, is a complete fraud and I'm the idiot who fell for it. No, she wouldn't call Jessica. Not yet. Not until she understood what she was dealing with. At 6:30, Claire received a text from Michael. Eugene meeting, running late. Probably won't be home until 10. Don't wait up. Love you. She stared at the message for a long time before typing a simple reply. Okay. She wondered where he really was. Still in Beaverton with Rachel and the children. Or actually in Eugene, playing yet another role for yet another audience. At 6:45, Claire grabbed her keys and headed back out into the rain. The drive to Northwest 23rd took 20 minutes through evening traffic. She found parking 2 blocks from Cup and Saucer and walked through the rain, barely noticing the cold water soaking through her jacket. The coffee shop was warm and crowded, filled with young professionals and students, tapping away at laptops. Claire scanned the room and spotted her immediate, a tall blonde woman sitting alone at a corner table, hands wrapped around a coffee cup, staring at nothing. Their eyes met across the room, and something silent and terrible passed between them. Recognition. Understanding. A shared acknowledgement of betrayal. Claire walked to the table and sat down without a word. For a long moment, neither woman spoke. Rachel was beautiful, Claire realized with a strange, detached observation. Maybe 45, with fine features and hazel eyes that were red from crying. She wore expensive-looking clothes, a cashmere sweater under her raincoat, simple gold jewelry. This wasn't some affair Michael had been carrying on. This was another wife. Another life. Another love. I don't know where to start, Rachel said finally, her voice hoarse. Neither do I, Claire admitted. Rachel pulled out her phone and opened her photo gallery. This is our wedding day. She turned the screen to show Claire a photo of a much younger Rachel in a white dress, standing beside a much younger Michael in a tuxedo. They looked happy. They looked real. Our honeymoon in Hawaii. Another photo, Michael and Rachel's laughing. Emma's birth! Tyler's first birthday. Last Christmas. Photo after photo, year after year. A family, a life, a history that stretched back nearly 2 decades. Claire felt tears burning her eyes. How long has he been doing this? Living 2 lives? I don't know, Rachel said, setting down her phone. When did you meet him? 4 years ago. At a museum fundraiser?
Rachel's face went white.
For years. God, I was pregnant with Tyler 4 years before that. We were buying our house, planning our future.
She paused. Did he ever mention working in Seattle a lot?
Around 2020, those Mealbane Tuno? He said he had a lot of clients there. Traveled up there weekly. That's when it must have started, Rachel said. He started traveling more around then. Said the company was expanding, needed more regional coverage. I never questioned it. Why would I? He was providing for his family, working hard. I trusted him completely. What does he tell you about his schedule?
Claire asked.
He's home Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Works from home on Monday's conference calls and paperwork. Goes into the Portland office on Tuesday, Wednesday. Then travels Thursday through Saturday. Sometimes Sunday. He always calls when he's on the road. Every night. He does the same with me, Claire said. Calls every night when he's traveling. God, he must have a system, a schedule. He probably has charts somewhere, tracking which lie he's told to which wife. Rachel's hands were shaking. Do you have children? Did you two ever talk about having children? No. I have a daughter from my first marriage, but she's 28 and lives in Boston. Michael always said he was glad he'd never had kids, that it wasn't something he wanted. He has kids, Rachel said, her voice breaking. Beautiful, smart, loving kids who think their dad hung the moon. Emma wants to be a marine biologist. Tyler plays piano like a dream. They're real, Claire. They're innocent, and they're going to be destroyed by this. The use of Claire's name felt intimate and wrong at the same time. These were 2 strangers bound together by their shared victimization, forced into an impossible intimacy by a man who had lied to them both. What though? Claire asked. Do we confront him together? Do we go to the police? Is this even illegal? Bigamy is illegal in Oregon, Rachel said. I looked it up this afternoon. It's a Class A misdemeanor. But proving it requires proving he knowingly married both of us. And I don't know if either of us wants to put this in the legal system. Not with kids involved. Claire thought about her own marriage certificate, filed away in the home office. We have a marriage license from Multnomah County. 3 years ago. So do we. From 2008. Which means your marriage isn't legal. He was still married to me when he married you. The words hit Claire like a physical blow. Not only had Michael been living a double life, her marriage wasn't even real. She wasn't his wife at all. She was his victim, his accomplice, his secret. I need to see him, Claire said suddenly. I need to look him in the face and ask him how he did this, how he woke up every morning and made a choice to keep lying. We both need to see him, Rachel said. Together. When Rachel pulled out her phone and typed quickly, I just texted him. Said there's an emergency at home and he needs to come back tonight. Let's see what he says. They waited in tense silence. 2 minutes passed. Then 5. Rachel's phone buzzed. She read the message aloud. What's wrong? Is everyone okay? I can be there by 9. Text him back, Claire said. Tell him everyone's fine, but you need him home. Don't give him a chance to prepare a story. Just come home. Please. Another minute of waiting. Then, on my way. I love you. Rachel looked up at Claire, her eyes swimming with unshed tears. He signs his texts to you the same way, doesn't he? Every single one! Claire whispered. They sat together in the coffee shop, 2 women who had never met before, bound together by betrayal and the awful knowledge that the man they both loved had never really existed at all. They decided to meet at Claire's house. It seemed safer. More Nutrasel's home was filled with children who didn't need to witness their father's exposure. And Claire's empty Craftsman on Southeast Division could contain the confrontation without innocent casualties. Rachel followed Claire's car through the rain-slicked streets of Portland, both women driving in stunned silence, their minds racing with questions that had no good answers. When they pulled into Claire's driveway, Rachel parked on the street and sat in her Mercedes SUV for a long moment before getting out. Inside the house, the two women stood awkwardly in the living room, suddenly hyper-aware of the intimacy of the situation. This was Claire's home with Michael, the couch where they'd watched movies together, the bookshelf they'd assembled on a Sunday afternoon, the rug they'd argued about at IKEA before deciding it was perfect. "Can I get you something?" Claire asked, then immediately felt ridiculous. What did you offer someone in this situation? Coffee? Wine? An apology for unknowingly participating in the destruction of their family. Water would be good, Rachel said quietly. Claire went to the kitchen and filled 2 glasses from the tap, her hands still shaking. When she returned, Rachel was standing by the fireplace, looking at the photos on the mantel. Claire and Michael at Crater Lake. Claire and Michael at a friend's wedding. Claire and Michael on their honeymoon in Vancouver. "We have almost the same pictures," Rachel said softly. "Different locations, but the same poses. The same smiles. He's performed this relationship twice, hasn't he? The same script, different actresses." Claire handed her the water and sank onto the couch. "I keep trying to remember if there were signs, things I missed, but I can't find them. He was perfect, Rachel. Attentive, thoughtful, reliable. He never gave me a reason to doubt him." "Same," Rachel said, sitting in the armchair across from her. 17 years of marriage, and I never suspected. Not one. That's what makes sickening. I pride myself on being observant, on knowing people. I'm a real estate agent. Make my living reading people, understanding what they're not saying, and I missed this completely. How did you find out? You said you saw my number in his phone, but what made you look?" Rachel took a sip of water, her eyes distant. "This morning, I was doing laundry. I grabbed his jeans from the bathroom and felt something in the pocket. It was a receipt from a restaurant Andina, that Peruvian place downtown, dated last Friday night. Michael told me he was in Seattle last Friday, so I thought maybe he'd stopped in Portland on his way back, grabbed dinner alone. But the receipt showed to entrees 2 glasses of wine. A shared dessert. We went to Andina last Friday," Claire said, the memory suddenly poisonous. "Michael said he had a late meeting that got canceled and wanted to take me somewhere special." "I know," Red, "because when I asked him about it this morning casually, just mentioned I'd found a receipt. He said it must have been from weeks ago, that he couldn't remember. He kissed me goodbye and left for work like everything was normal. But something... So I did something I've never done in 17 years of marriage. I went through his phone and found me. And found you. Your number saved under Claire PT office. PT for physical therapy, I assume, in case I ever saw it. But the messages were. They were the same messages he sends me. The same expressions. The same pet names. Even the same emoji combination." Claire felt sick. "Let me guess. Heart emoji, followed by the house emoji." Rachel's face crumpled. "Yes, that's his signature. Home is where the heart is. A always size, except he has 2 homes. 2 hearts. 2 complete lives." A car door slammed outside. Both women tensed, rising simultaneously. Through the front window, they could see Michael getting out of his silver Lexus sedan, his face concerned and hurried as he jogged through the rain toward the front door. "Are you ready for this?" Rachel asked, her voice steadier than her hands. "No," Claire admitted, "but I don't think we have a choice." The front door opened. Michael had his own key. "Of course, Aunt," he called out as he entered. "Claire, honey, what's wrong?"
Your text sounded. He stopped dead in the entryway.
His eyes moved from Claire to Rachel, then back again. For just a moment, his face went completely blank, stripped of all expression. Then, with visible effort, he arranged his features into confusion. "Rachel? What are you doing here? Did something happen with the kids?" "The kids are fine," Rachel said, her voice like ice. "We're all fine, Michael." "Or we were, until about 6 hours ago." Michael looked between, his mind clearly racing, searching for an exit, a story, an explanation that might still salvage this. "Claire, why is Rachel here?" "Sit down, Michael," Claire said, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. "We need to talk about your 2 lives. Your 2 wives. Your 2 homes." She watched the blood drain from his face. For 3 seconds, maybe 5, he stood frozen in the entryway, rainwater dripping from his coat onto the hardwood floor. Then he seemed to deflate, his shoulders sagging, his expression shifting from confusion to something that might have been resignation or might have been calculation. "Let me explain," he said quietly. "Please do," Rachel said, her voice sharp. "Explain how you've been married to both of us. Explain how you've been coming home to me and our children Monday through Wednesday, then coming home to Claire Thursday through Saturday. Explain how you've maintained 2 complete lives for years without either of us knowing. I'm genuinely curious about the logistics." Michael moved slowly into the living room, like a man approaching a cliff edge. Instead, he stood near the fireplace, his back to the photos that documented his double life. "It started as a mistake," he said, and both women made sounds of disbelief. He held up his hands. "I know how that sounds, but it's true. 4 years ago, I was traveling constantly for work. The company was expanding, and I was under enormous pressure to grow the territory. I was barely home. Rachel, you remember we were fighting constantly about my schedule. Don't you dare blame this on our marriage having problems," Rachel said, her voice shaking with rage. "Every marriage has problems. Normal people don't solve them by secretly marrying someone else. I'm not blaming you," Michael said quickly. "I'm trying to explain how it happened. I was lonely. I was stressed. And when I met Claire at that fundraiser, I wanted to be someone else for a night. Someone without all the pressure and responsibility. So I didn't mention I was married. I told myself it was just one evening, one conversation with a kind woman who made me feel interesting and valued." "But it wasn't just one evening," Claire said. "No," Michael admitted, "because she called. And I answered. And I told myself I could manage it, have someone in Portland who made me feel alive, someone separate from my real life. I never meant for it to go so far." "You married her," Rachel said, her voice breaking. "You stood in a ceremony and made vows. You bought a house together. You built a life. That's not an affair that got out of hand, Michael. That's deliberate. That's calculated. That's monstrous." Michael's face twisted. I know. But by the time we'd been dating for a year, I didn't know how to tell Claire the truth. I'd already lied about being divorced, about not having children. If I'd told her then, I would have lost her. And I couldn't stand the thought of that. She made me happy in a way I hadn't felt in years. "So you made me part of your lie," Claire said, her voice hollow. "You made me complicit in your betrayal of your actual wife and children. You let me think I was building a legitimate life with you. I convinced myself I was protecting both of you," Michael said desperately. "If you didn't know about each other, no one would get hurt. I could give you both good lives, be present for both of you. You were never present," Rachel interrupted. "You were always performing. Every smile, every conversation, every intimate moment, it was all calculated. You were managing 2 separate productions with yourself as the star." "How did you keep track," Claire asked suddenly, "of what you'd told each of us? What details belonged to which life?" Michael was silent for a long moment. "I kept notes," he finally admitted, "on my laptop. Encrypted. Important dates, conversations, things you'd told me about your lives. I reviewed them before coming home to either of you. Made sure I didn't mix up details. The casual efficiency of it was somehow worse than the betrayal itself. He'd created a system. Method. This wasn't passion or confusion, it was project management." "Did you ever love either of us?" Rachel asked, and her voice was so raw, so vulnerable, that Claire felt her own eyes fill with tears. "Or was it all just, what? An ego trip? A power game?" "I love both of you," Michael said, and he had the audacity to sound sincere. "That's what made this so impossible. I couldn't choose. I couldn't give either of you up. You're both essential to me in different ways. Rachel, you're the mother of my children, my partner in building a stable home. Claire, you're my intellectual equal, someone who challenges me, who sees me as I want to be seen." "Stop," Claire said, standing abruptly. "Stop trying to make this sound like some romantic dilemma. You're not torn between 2 loves. You're a con artist who manipulated 2 women into loving someone who doesn't exist. The Michael I fell in love with doesn't have children. The Michael Rachel married would never betray his family like this. Neither of those men are real. You created characters and played them, and we were your audience." "No," Michael said, his voice rising. "That's not fair. My feelings are real. My love for both of you is real. The circumstances are complicated, yes, but complicated. Rachel's voice was venomous. My children think they have a father who loves them. Emma just asked me yesterday if you'd be home for her volleyball championship game next week. Tyler wants you to help him prepare for his piano recital. Not complications. Michael, they're your children, and you've been abandoning them half the week to play house with another woman. I never abandoned them, Michael protested. I'm there every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I coached Tyler's Little League team. You coached it until 2 years ago, Rachel corrected. You stopped because of work commitments. What were the real commitments, Michael? Date nights with Claire. Michael's face hardened slightly, the first sign of anger breaking through his desperate placation. You don't understand the pressure I was under. Maintaining 2 households, 2 lives, making sure both of you were happy and provided for. Nobody asked you to do that, Claire shouted, surprising herself with her vehemence. Nobody forced you to marry me while you were still married to Rachel. You made these choices, Michael, every single day. For 4 years, you woke up and chose to lie to both of us. What I don't understand, Rachel said, her voice dangerously quiet, is how you slept at night, how you made love to both of us, told us both you loved us, and never once felt enough guilt to confess. What kind of person does that? Michael slumped against the wall, and for the first time, he looked genuinely broken. A coward, he said quietly. A selfish coward who wanted everything and didn't care who got hurt as long as it wasn't me. The admission hung in the air. At least it was honest. I need you to leave. Get out of this house! Get your things and go! Where? Michael asked. And the question would have been funny if it weren't so pathetic. I don't care, Claire said. A hotel! Your car! Hey! Just get out! We need to figure out what happens next. Her real estate agent's practicalities surfacing even through the emotional devastation. Legally, financially, we need to know what you've done with money, property, accounts. How much of our lives is built on fraud? I'll tell you everything, Michael said quickly. Whatever you need to know. I'll cooperate fully. But please, can we do this calmly? Can we be rational about get out? Claire repeated. Now. Before I call the police and report you for bigamy. Michael looked at Rachel. The kids. When do I tell them? How do I? You don't. Not tonight. Not until I figure out how to explain to them that their father is a fraud without destroying them completely. You stay away from my house until I tell you otherwise. Michael nodded slowly. Defeated, he moved toward the stairs. I need to get some clothes. Leave them, Claire said. Get out now, or I'm calling 911. For a moment, it looked like Michael might argue. Then he simply turned and walked out the front door, leaving it open behind him. They heard his car start, watched through the window as he pulled away into the rainy Portland night. The house was silent except for the sound of rain and 2 women breathing. What do we do now? Claire asked, her voice small. Rachel turned to look at her, and despite everything, the betrayal, the anger, the devastation, there was something approaching compassion in her eyes. We figure out how to survive this, Rachel said. Together, the next 72 hours passed in a blur of revelations, each more disturbing than the last. Claire and Rachel became unlikely partners in excavating the ruins of their lives, spending hours on phone calls and meeting in coffee shops to compare notes, share documents, and piece together the full scope of Michael's deception. Rachel arrived at Claire's house Saturday morning with a banker's box full of files. 17 years of financial records, she said, setting the box on the dining room table. I've been going through them all night. There are things here that don't make sense. Money moving around. Accounts I didn't know existed. They spread the documents across the table: tax returns, bank statements, credit card bills, investment accounts. Claire contributed her own 3 years of paperwork, and together they began to map Michael's financial double life. He has 4 bank accounts, Rachel said, marking them on a lead. Joint account with me at Wells Fargo, joint account with you at US Bank, and 2 personal accounts at different credit unions that neither of us were told about. Why would he need secret accounts? Claire asked. To move money between lives without either of us seeing, Rachel said. Look at this. Every month he withdraws $5,000 from our joint account, allegedly for business expenses. But I'm seeing deposits of similar amounts into one of his personal accounts, then transfers to your joint account labeled as paycheck deposits. Claire felt he was taking your money and giving it to me. Rachel? I didn't know. I thought I know you didn't know, Rachel said, her voice tired but not accusatory. That's his specialty, keeping everyone in the dark. But look at this tax return from last year. He claimed Emma and Tyler as dependents, which makes sense. But there's also a deduction for home office expenses at an address on Southeast Division. This address, Claire said, understanding dawning. He was writing off this house on your tax returns. He was using your family's tax deductions to pay for his life with me, and probably vice versa. Pulling out another document. I'm betting when we see his individual return, the one he must have filed separately for his business, he's claiming this house as his primary residence to get tax benefits here too. They spent the morning following money trails and discovering the extent of Michael's financial manipulation. He'd taken out a home equity line of credit on Rachel's house in Beaverton without her knowing the funds were being used to help purchase the Craftsman on Southeast Division. He'd maintained 2 car insurance policies, paying for both from different accounts. He'd even set up separate health insurance policies, Rachel and the children on one plan through his employer, Claire on a separate individual plan that he paid for through one of his secret accounts. The organization required to maintain this is staggering, Claire said, rubbing her temples. How did he remember all of it? How did he not slip up more often? The notes, Rachel said darkly. Remember, he kept encrypted files tracking everything. This wasn't impulsive, Claire. This was planned and maintained with the same attention someone would give to running a business. Around noon, Rachel's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and her face went pale. It's Emma. I told her I had to work today, but she, putting on a voice that was artificially bright. Hey, sweetheart. What's up? Claire could hear the teenage girl's voice through the phone, though not the words. Dad. Rachel's voice faltered. Honey, Dad's on a business trip. He'll be back Monday. No, I don't know why he's not answering his phone. He's probably in meetings. Emma, stop. We can talk about this later. Because I said so. She hung up, her hands shaking. She wants to know where Michael is. Tyler apparently tried to call him last night to ask a question about his homework, and Michael didn't answer. They're getting suspicious. What are you going to tell them? Claire asked. I don't know, Rachel admitted, her eyes filling with tears. How do you explain something like this to children? Emma is 15, old enough to understand betrayal, young enough to be destroyed by it. And Tyler is 12. He still thinks his dad is a hero. You need help, Claire said. Professional help, a therapist who specializes in family trauma. I know, Rachel wiped her eyes. I made an appointment with a family counselor for Monday afternoon. I told the kids we needed to have a family meeting. But I'm terrified. Claire, I'm terrified of what this will do to them. Claire reached across the table. And a week ago, this woman had been a stranger. A week ago, Claire would have sworn her marriage was solid and her life was on track. Now they were holding hands over a pile of evidence that proved everything had been a lie. There's something else, Rachel said, pulling her hand back and opening her laptop. I've been looking at his travel schedule, the real one, based on credit card purchases and hotel stays. Most of the trips were legitimate. He really was meeting clients in Seattle, Eugene, Salem. But there are gaps. Nights where he claimed to be in one city, but his credit card was used in another. She turned the laptop so Claire could see the spreadsheet she'd created. Dates, locations, charges. A pattern emerged. Last October, Rachel said, pointing to a cluster of entries, he told me he was at a conference in San Diego. 3 nights, but his credit card shows purchases in Portland. Where was he? Claire pulled out her phone and checked her calendar app. He told me he was in Seattle for meetings. I remember because I was annoyed he'd missed my school's open house night. She looked up. Was he with another woman? Is there a third person? I don't think so, Rachel said slowly. I think he was here in Portland, but not with either of us. Look at the charges there, all for one person. Single hotel room. Meals for one? I think he was resting. Think about it. He's maintaining 2 households, 2 relationships, traveling constantly. When does he get a break? When does Michael Brennan get to just exist without performing? I think he occasionally lied to both of us so he could spend a night alone in a hotel room and decompress. The image was somehow more pathetic than infuriating. Michael hiding in a Holiday Inn Express, eating room service alone, taking a break from his exhausting double life. I found his note, said quietly. The encrypted files. I knew he used his mother's maiden name for passwords. He'd mentioned it once years ago in a different context. Last night, I tried different variations until I got into his personal laptop. She pulled out a USB drive. I copied everything. I shouldn't have, legally speaking, but I wanted you to see. I wanted you to understand the full extent of what he did. Claire hesitated, then took the drive and inserted it into her own laptop. A folder opened, filled with documents organized by year. She clicked on the most recent one. What she found was chilling in its mundane efficiency. Spreadsheets tracking important dates, birthdays, anniversaries, school events for the kids, work deadlines for Claire. Documents titled Richo, Conversation Log in Claire. Conversation log that contained detailed notes about discussions they'd had, problems they'd mentioned, things they cared about. He wrote down everything we told him, Claire said, scrolling through entries. Look at this. February 14th, Claire mentioned student named Marcus struggling with stuttering. Follow up next week. Show concern. He literally scheduled his empathy. Here's mine, Rachel said, pulling up another file. March 3rd. Emma stressed about volleyball tryouts. Make sure to text encouragement morning of tryouts. Remember to ask about results that evening. Our emotional lives were tasks on his to-do list. They sat in silence, reading through months of careful documentation. Every meaningful conversation they'd thought they'd had with their husband had been recorded, analyzed, filed away for future reference. He'd been methodical in his manipulation, tracking their emotional needs the way a salesman might track client preferences. There's a folder here called Crisis Management, Claire said, clicking it open. Inside were detailed plans for various scenarios: what to do if one wife showed up at the other's house, what to say if caught in a lie about his location, how to explain away financial discrepancies. He literally planned for getting caught, Rachel said, her voice hollow. Look at this document. If Rachel discovers Claire, followed by a step-by-step script for how to minimize damage and keep both relationships alive. Did he think this could last forever? Claire wondered. Did he have an endgame? Or was he just going to keep lying until he died? Rachel pulled up another document. He did have an endgame. Look at this. It's dated 3 months ago. It's a plan to gradually end his marriage to me by manufacturing problems and leading me to believe divorce was my idea. Claire leaned over to read. It was detailed and cruel. Michael had planned to start picking fights with Rachel, to become distant and distracted, to make her fall out of love with him slowly enough that she wouldn't suspect another woman. He'd calculated it would take 18 months to make Rachel want to leave him, at which point he'd agree to a divorce and maintain a relationship with the kids while being free to fully commit to Claire. I'm going to be sick, Rachel said, pushing away from the table. She made it to the kitchen sink before vomiting, her whole body shaking with the force of it. Claire brought her water and a towel, standing beside her while she recovered. We need to stop, Claire said. This is too much. We need to take a break. No, Rachel said, wiping her mouth. I need to see all of it. I need to know exactly what was done to me, to my children. I need to understand the full scope before I decide what to do about it. What can we do about it? Claire asked. Legally, is there any recourse? I talked to a lawyer yesterday, Rachel said. Family law attorney. Bigamy is a Class A misdemeanor in Oregon, punishable by up to a year in jail and a $5,000 fine, but proving it requires proving he knowingly entered into a second marriage while still legally married to me, which shouldn't be hard given the marriage licenses. But the lawyer said prosecutors rarely pursue these cases unless there's fraud, involve money crimes, identity theft, that sort of thing. There is fraud involved, said. He fraudulently filed taxes, moved money between accounts, took out credit in both of our names. Exactly, Rachel said, which means if we wanted to, we could press charges and probably get him convicted. But do we want to? It was the central question. Revenge versus mercy. Justice versus pragmatism. Public exposure versus private resolution. If we press charges, it becomes public record, Rachel continued. My children's names will be in court documents. Emma and Tyler will have to deal with their friends knowing. Their school knowing. The newspapers would cover it. Local businessmen convicted of bigamy makes for a good headline. But if we don't press charges, he gets away with it. He destroys 2 families and faces no legal consequences. There are other consequences, Rachel said. I'm divorcing him. That's non-negotiable. He'll lose his family, his home, his relationship with his children. That's punishment enough. In some ways. What about me? Claire asked. Legally, I was never married to him. Our marriage isn't valid. But I changed my name. I filed taxes as a married person. I put him on my health insurance policy at school. Do I face legal consequences for unknowingly participating in fraud? The lawyer said no. Rachel reassured her. You were a victim of fraud, not a perpetrator. You believed in good faith that your marriage was legal. You won't face charges. But I'm still complicit, Claire said softly. Even if I didn't know, I was the other woman. Rachel, I destroyed your marriage. No, Rachel said firmly. Michael destroyed my marriage. You were a victim too. We both were. They spent the rest of the afternoon going through more documents, finding more evidence of deception. By evening, they had a complete picture of Michael's double life, the financial manipulation, the careful scheduling, the documented lies, the calculated emotional management. I need to go home, Rachel said finally, packing up the documents. The kids are expecting me for dinner, and I need to prepare for Monday's family meeting. I need to figure out how to tell them their father is a liar without destroying their ability to trust anyone ever again. Can I help? Claire asked. I know it's weird, but if you need someone to talk to. Rachel looked at her for a... You know what's strange? I should hate you! You're the woman my husband had an affair with, married while he was still married to me. But I can't hate you, because you were victimized too. He lied to you just as comprehensively as he lied to me. We're in this together, said, whether we want to be or not. Rachel nodded. I'll call you after the family meeting on Monday. Let you know how it goes. After Rachel left, Claire sat alone in the house that suddenly didn't feel like home anymore. Every object was contaminated by Michael's lies. The couch they'd picked out together, the dishes they'd received as wedding gifts, the bed where he'd held her and whispered that he loved her, all of it had been based on fraud. Claire's phone buzzed. A text from Michael. Can we talk? Please, I need to explain more. I need you to understand. She stared at the message for a long time before typing a reply. There's nothing you can say that would make this better. Leave me alone. His response came in. I love you. That was never a lie. Claire turned off her phone and poured herself a glass of wine. She sat in the darkening house, rain pattering against the windows, and tried to figure out how to rebuild a life from the ashes of a marriage that had never existed at all. Monday afternoon, Rachel sat in her living room in Beaverton with Emma and Tyler, a family therapist named Dr. Sarah Chun sitting in the armchair across from them. Through the large windows, the November rain fell steadily, turning the backyard into a watercolor of grays and browns. Emma, tall and athletic in her volleyball warm-up jacket, sat with her arms crossed, her face already suspicious. Tyler, smaller and quieter, clutched a throw pillow to his chest. Both children knew something was wrong. Their mother had been crying all weekend. Their father hadn't come home in 3 days. And now there was a stranger in their living room who'd been introduced as someone to help us talk through some difficult things. Rachel had rehearsed this conversation 100 times in her mind. She'd written notes, consulted with Dr. Chun in advance, practiced how to say the words that would shatter her children's understanding of their family. But now, sitting here with their expectant faces looking at her, she found her carefully prepared speech dissolving into inadequacy. Mom, where's Dad? Emma asked, her voice sharp with teenage impatience and underlying fear. And why is this therapist here? What's going on? Your father! Rachel's voice broke. She took a breath, steadied herself. Your father has been lying to us for a very long time about something very serious. Is he sick? Tyler asked immediately, his face going pale. Does he have cancer? Is he dying? No, he's not sick. But our family is going to change because of what he's done, and I need you both to listen carefully while I explain. Dr. Chun leaned forward slightly. Emma, Tyler, what your mom needs to tell you is going to be shocking and difficult to hear. I'm here to help you process your feelings and to make sure you know that none of this is your fault. Okay. Both children nodded, their expressions shifting from confusion to fear. Rachel folded her hands in her lap to stop them from shaking. 4 years ago, your father met a woman named Claire. He told her he was divorced and didn't have children. He dated her, and eventually, he married her. Emma's face scrunched in confusion. That doesn't make sense. He's married to you. Yes, Rachel said, tears starting to fall despite her efforts to remain composed. He is. He's been married to both of us. He's been living two separate lives, spending Monday through Wednesday here with us and Thursday through Saturday with Claire in Portland. He's been lying to all of us about where he is and what he's doing. Though it was absolute. Tyler's mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Emma stared at her mother as if she'd started speaking a foreign language. That's insane, Emma finally said. That can't be true. Dad wouldn't do that. He loves us. He does love you, Rachel said quickly. This isn't about you, too. This is about choices your father made that were wrong and hurtful. But his love for you is real. How can you say that? Emma's voice rose, cracking with emotion. If he loved us, he wouldn't have spent half his time with another family. He wouldn't have lied to us every single day. Tyler was crying now, silent tears streaming down his face. Does Claire have kids? Do we have, other brothers and sisters? No, Rachel said, reaching for Tyler's hand, but he pulled away. Claire has an adult daughter who lives across the country. There are no other children involved. Just us, Tyler whispered. We're the only kids he was lying to. The devastation in her 12-year-old son's voice broke something in Rachel. She moved to sit beside him on the couch, pulling him into her arms even as he remained stiff and unresponsive. Why? Emma demanded, standing up abruptly. Why would he do this? Was he bored with us? Did we do something wrong? No, Dr. Chun interjected gently. Emma, this is important to understand. Your father's choices had nothing to do with you or anything you did or didn't do. Adults make complicated decisions for complicated reasons that are about their own needs and problems, not about the worth or lovability of their children. Then what reasons? Emma was pacing now, her athletic energy finding no outlet in the confines of the living room. What possible reason could justify this? There isn't a justification, Rachel said. Your father was selfish. He wanted 2 lives, so it took them regardless of who got hurt. I know that's not the answer you want, but it's the truth. Where is he now? Tyler asked, his voice muffled against his mother's shoulder. He's staying in a hotel. He wants to see you both, to talk to you, but I wanted to tell you first. I wanted you to hear it from me, and I wanted Dr. Chun here to help you process your feelings. I don't want to see him, Emma said flatly. Ever again. You might feel differently in time, Dr. Chun said. Right now, you're angry and hurt, which is completely valid. But your father is still your father. That relationship doesn't just disappear, even when trust is broken. Watch me, Emma said. Her jaw set in a way that reminded Rachel painfully of Michael. He chose to break this family. He doesn't get to be my dad anymore. Tyler pulled away from Rachel and looked at her with red-rimmed eyes. Are you getting divorced? Yes. I am. Your father and I will not be staying married after this. What about Claire? Tyler asked, the name foreign and uncomfortable in his mouth. Is she divorcing him too? Claire's situation is complicated, Rachel said carefully. Legally, her marriage to your father isn't valid because he was already married to me. But yes, they're separating. Good, Emma said viciously. I hope he ends up alone. I hope both of you leave him and he has nobody. Rachel started. No, Mom. Don't defend him. Don't tell me he deserves our understanding or our forgiveness. He lied to us every single day for 4 years. Every time he said he was traveling for work. Every time he missed one of my games because of a meeting. Every time he said he loved us all lies. I'll never forgive him for that. Never. She stormed upstairs, and a moment later, they heard her bedroom door slam. Tyler remained on the couch, looking small and lost. I don't understand how he had time, Tyler said quietly. He was always so busy with work, but he still came to my piano practices. He helped me with my homework. How did he fit in another whole family? He was very organized, Rachel said, the words inadequate for the calculated manipulation Michael had employed. He planned everything carefully. Does Claire know about us now? Tyler asked. Yes. She's known since last Thursday. This has been devastating for her, too. Is she nice? The question surprised Rachel. I think so, she said honestly. She's a speech therapist at a high school. She thought she was in a legitimate marriage. She didn't know about us. Tyler processed this. So she's a victim, too. Yes, Rachel said, grateful for her son's capacity for empathy, even in his pain. She is, I think. Tyler's voice. I think I want to talk to Dad. Not because I forgive him, but because I have questions. That's okay, Rachel said, pulling him close again. Whenever you're ready, we can arrange that. Dr. Chun can be there if you want. They sat together while the rain continued outside, mother and son holding each other in the wreckage of their family. Across town, Claire sat in her principal's office at Roosevelt High School, explaining why she needed to take a week of personal leave. Family emergency. The euphemism grossly inadequate. I need some time to handle some legal matters. Principal Morrison, a kind woman in her 60s who'd been at Roosevelt for 30 years, studied Claire's face. Are you okay? You look like you haven't slept. I haven't, Claire admitted. Not really. Not since Thursday. Take 2 weeks, said. And Claire, whatever you're dealing with, I hope you have support. Don't try to handle everything alone. Claire nodded, not trusting herself to speak without crying. That evening, she met Rachel at a lawyer's office downtown. They'd retained separate attorneys, but agreed to coordinate their approaches to dealing with Michael. Rachel's lawyer, Margaret Chun, no relation to Dr. Chun, they'd discovered was a sharp woman in her 50s who specialized in complex divorce cases. Claire's lawyer, Robert Walsh, handled fraud and identity cases. Let's talk strategy. Margaret sighed, spreading documents across the conference table. Rachel, you're filing for divorce on grounds of fraud and extreme cruelty. Oregon is a no-fault divorce state, but the grounds matter for property division and support determinations. What am I entitled to? Rachel asked. Potentially a lot, Margaret said. Michael used marital funds to establish and maintain a second household. That's dissipation of marital assets. You could argue for a significantly larger share of the marital estate as compensation. There's also the issue of child support, Hilo, that regardless and, potentially, spousal support given the length of the marriage and his fraud. What about Claire? Rachel asked. Margaret glanced at Robert, who took over. Claire's situation is different. Because her marriage to Michael isn't legally valid, she's not entitled to spousal support or property division as a spouse. However, she may have claims based on fraud and breach of contract. If she can prove financial losses stemming from Michael's deception and, we believe we can pursue civil damages. I changed my name, Claire said. I'll have to change it back. I put him on my health insurance policy, which means I may have committed insurance fraud even though I didn't know we'll handle it, Robert assured her. You're a victim here. We'll make sure you don't face any negative legal consequences. What about criminal charges? Rachel asked. For the bigamy. Margaret and Robert exchanged glances. That's your decision. Margaret sighed. We've consulted with the Multnomah County DA's office. They'd likely prosecute if you wanted to press charges. But we want to make sure you understand the implications. Tell me. It becomes public. Very public. Bigamy cases are rare and newsworthy. Your children's names would be in court documents, possibly in news articles. Michael would potentially face jail time and a criminal record that has its own consequences: employment, future relationships, his ability to maintain a relationship with Emma and Tyler. I don't care about his future relationships, Rachel said. But do you care about your children's relationship with their father? Robert asked gently. Because that's what we're really talking about. If Michael goes to jail, serves time, has a criminal record that affects them too. Rachel was silent for a long moment. I want him to suffer, she said finally. I want him to face real consequences for what he's done, but I don't want my children to suffer more than they already are. Then we recommend civil proceedings only, Margaret said. Hit him where it actually hurts his bank account. Make the financial consequences so severe that he understands the true cost of his actions. But keep the criminal system out of it for the children's sake. Claire. Rachel looked at her. What do you think? Claire had been quiet, processing everything. I want justice, she said slowly. But I also want closure. I want to rebuild my life without this hanging over me for years while a criminal case works its way through the courts. I think we should pursue maximum civil damages and make sure he can't do this to anyone else, but leave criminal charges off the table.
Rachel nodded slowly.
Okay, civil route. But I want him destroyed financially. I want him to understand that there's a price for what he did. We can make that happen, Margaret sighed. 2 weeks later, Claire and Rachel met for coffee at a shop in southeast Portland. Neutral territory, where neither of them had memories with Michael. It had become something of a routine. They met twice a week to coordinate legal strategies and, increasingly, just to talk. How are the kids? Claire asked as they settled into a bowl. Tyler's seeing Dr. Chun twice a week, Rachel said. He's processing things slowly but healthily, asking good questions. Emma's angrier. She refuses to see Michael or talk about him. My lawyer says that's normal for teenagers who feel betrayed. They often react more strongly than younger kids. Has Michael tried to contact them? Constantly. Texts, calls, letters. Emma blocks him on everything. Tyler reads the messages but doesn't respond. Dr. Chun says to let them control the pace of reconciliation if it ever happens. What about you? Claire asked. How are you doing? Rachel took a sip of her latte, considering. Some days, I'm okay. I'm functional. I can focus on work. I can be present for the kids. Other days I can barely get out of bed. I keep replaying 17 years of marriage, looking for signs I missed, wondering if I was just too stupid to see what was right in front of me. You weren't stupid, Claire said firmly. He was calculating and careful. He designed his lies to be invisible. Ignore. Intellectually, I know that. But emotionally, Rachel shook her head. I feel like an idiot. I feel like a homewrecker, Claire admitted. Even though I didn't know. Even though I was lied to. I still feel like I destroyed your marriage. You didn't destroy anything. Michael destroyed it. You and I were both casualties of his selfishness. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Two women bound by trauma who were slowly, tentatively, building something that might become friendship. I've been thinking about moving, Claire said. That house on Division A can't stay there. Every room has memories that are poisoned now. Every object is a reminder of lies. I understand, Rachel said. I'm keeping our house because of the kids. They need stability. But I've redone the master bedroom completely. New bed, new furniture, new everything. I couldn't sleep in the bed I shared with him knowing he shared a different bed with you. I'm sorry, Claire started, but Rachel held up a hand. Don't apologize. We've talked about this. Neither of us has anything to apologize for. Michael does. Only Michael. Have you heard from him recently? Claire asked. He served with divorce papers last Monday. He called me sobbing, begging me to reconsider, saying he'd made mistakes, but he loved me. I told him to communicate only through my lawyer from now on. Rachel paused. Has he contacted you? Dozens of texts. I blocked him. He tried calling from different numbers, so I stopped answering numbers I don't recognize. Last week he showed up at Roosevelt while I was working. Security escorted him out. God! Rachel breathed. The audacity of that man. My principal told me if he shows up again, we're getting a restraining order. You should do it anyway, Rachel said. Margaret says I should too. Make it clear he's not welcome in our lives while we're processing everything. Claire nodded, making a mental note to ask Robert about it. There's something else, Rachel said, her voice shifting to something harder. Margaret got the financial discovery back from Michael's lawyers. Want to know how much he spent on maintaining two lives? Do I? Over 4 years! He spent approximately $280,000 on expenses related to you and your household. Money that came from our joint accounts, our home equity, our children's college fund. Claire felt the blood drain from her face. Rachel, I didn't know. I'll pay it back, however long it takes. No, Rachel said firmly. You won't. Because you didn't steal. Michael did. And he's the one who's going to pay. Margaret's going after him for dissipation of marital assets. She thinks we can get me 70% of the marital estate instead of the usual 50-50 split, plus child support, plus potential spousal support. He's going to be financially devastated. Good, Claire said, and meant it. My only regret, Rachel said, is that financial pain is the only real consequence he'll face. No jail time. No criminal record. Just a lighter bank account and 2 families who won't speak to him. Maybe that's worse, Claire suggested. Prison ends. Divorce. Hint. But losing your children's respect, your family's trust, your reputation, that's forever. He'll carry this for the rest of his life. I hope so, Rachel said. I hope every single day he thinks about what he destroyed and feels even a fraction of the pain he caused. They finished their coffee and walked out into the gray Portland afternoon together. At the corner they paused before heading to their separate cars. Same time next week? Rachel asked. I'll be here, Claire said. Rachel hesitated. then pulled Claire into a brief hug. It was the first physical contact they'd had that wasn't dictated by practicality passing documents, sitting next to each other in lawyers' offices. This was something else, something like solidarity. "We're going to be okay," Rachel said. "Both of us. Eventually." "Eventually," Claire agreed. 6 months later, on a surprisingly sunny April morning, Claire loaded the last box into her Honda CR-V and took a final look at the Craftsman house on Southeast Division. She'd sold it to a young couple expecting their first child, people who would fill it with new memories that weren't contaminated by betrayal. She'd bought a small condo in the Pearl District, closer to work, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the city, a fresh start in a space that had never known Michael Brennan. Earphone buzzed. A text from Rita signing final divorce papers today. "It's finally over." Claire typed back, "Congratulations." "That's huge. Coffee tomorrow to celebrate." "Absolutely." Claire smiled. Over the past 6 months, her relationship with Rachel had evolved into genuine friendship. They'd supported each other through the worst of the legal proceedings, celebrated small victories, and held each other up on the bad days when the weight of betrayal felt unbearable. Emma still refused to speak to Michael, but Tyler had started supervised visits with a therapist present. The relationship was fragile and carefully managed, but it existed. Michael had rented a small apartment in Tigard and was, according to Rachel's sources, working the same job but facing significant financial strain from the divorce settlement and his legal fees. Claire had received a modest settlement from her civil suit, enough to cover her legal costs and provide some financial cushion, while she rebuilt. She'd changed her name back to Hoffman, updated all her documentation, and worked with the school district to resolve the health insurance issue. No charges had been filed against her, and her employment had never been in jeopardy. She'd also started therapy with a counselor who specialized in trauma from intimate partner manipulation. It was helping, slowly, to rebuild her sense of trust and her confidence in her own judgment. "You're not broken," her therapist had said in their last session. "You're healing. There's a difference." As Claire drove away from Southeast Division for the last time, she felt the weight of the past 6 months beginning to lift. She wasn't healed yet. That would take time. Maybe years. And that was enough. Her phone rang. Sandra, her friend who'd dragged her to that museum fundraiser 4 years ago where she'd met Michael. "Hey," Claire answered. "What's up?" "Book club tonight at my place," Sandra said. "You're coming, right? No excuses." Claire had been avoiding social situations, uncomfortable with the questions and the sympathy, but maybe it was time to start living again, carefully and with new wisdom, but living nonetheless. "I'll be there," Claire said. "What are we reading?" "Something cheerful, I promise." "We've had enough heavy material for 1 year. Tell me about it," Claire said, and found herself laughing a real laugh, the first in months. She ended the call and merged onto I-405, heading toward downtown and her new home. In the rearview mirror, the Craftsman house disappeared from view. Ahead of her, the Portland skyline gleamed in unexpected April sunshine. She didn't know what the future. She didn't know if she'd ever trust anyone enough to risk love again. She didn't know if the healing process would take months or years or maybe forever. But she knew she wasn't alone. She had Rachel, who understood in ways no one else could. She had her colleagues at Roosevelt, her friends like Sandra, her daughter Jessica in Boston. She had her work, which gave her purpose and reminded her daily that she could help people find their voices, just as she was learning to find her own again. Most importantly, she had herself scarred but not broken, wounded but healing, forever changed by what Michael had done but not destroyed by it. She'd survived the worst betrayal imaginable. Everything that came after would be, in some way. Claire turned up the music and drove toward her new life, leaving the lies and the broken pieces behind her where they belonged in the past, where they could no longer hurt her. The future was uncertain, but it was hers.